Hello and welcome everyone to Planning Hybrid Meetings, how to hold productive meetings with Teams Rooms. Now, Teams Rooms might sound a little confusing because Microsoft in all of its naming wisdom likes to call lots of things the same thing. I know that's a technical term. So we're going to be talking about Teams and how to collaborate with your teams by using Teams Rooms. No puns intended. I'm Nate Austin. I'll be presenting today, and we got Stephanie Kingsley in producing. So I want to start with some quick takes. We want to start something a little different as far as what are you going to get out of this session. We're going to show you how you can do one touch to join a Teams meeting from a meeting room or a huddle room or a conference room or a training room, depending on what you call your meeting rooms. You'll be able to share a whiteboard session. That's one of the biggest problems about the fully remote experience versus a hybrid experience is how do you allow the remote people to participate in whiteboarding sessions? So we'll show you how to share whiteboard through your Teams meetings and Teams room. And finally, just some tips and tricks for navigating Teams rooms to help you set your team up for success with regard to hybrid meetings when you have a mix of in-person and remote. All right, so today's session, those are the quick takes. We're going to dig in a little deeper. We're going to talk about some of the common problems that businesses will face with hybrid meetings. You know, pre-pandemic, it was really the exception to have someone remote. Now it's more the norm, and then we swung the pendulum all the way to the other side where we're 100% remote all the time. And now as people are coming back into the office, not back to work because we've been working extra hard over the pandemic, but we're coming back to the office. But now it's going to be more the norm of having hybrid meetings where you're going to have some people that are in person and some people that are remote. So we're going to talk about those common problems. Then we're going to demonstrate some of the capabilities. It's a little unique, so bear with us as we go through the demonstration because you'll see it as we share some screens here. We've got multiple laptops, multiple devices to try and navigate between, to try and share via a Teams live event how to join other Teams meetings, but yet we're already joined to the live event. So anyway, you'll see that. And so give us some grace, if you wouldn't mind, as we go through the demonstration. And then we have some key tips and tricks, as well as some requirements at the end. And then we'll open up for some questions for those who would like to ask some questions. Okay. But before we go on, 1 minute about MyTech. I always like to touch base. MyTech is a small and medium business technology and business consulting organization. We engage to help support IT of an organization, but really to help bridge the gap between what the business is trying to accomplish and make sure that IT is aligned with it by implementing our proven IT strategy. It's not necessarily the only IT strategy, it's just one that we have found that works really, really well, and we know we can deliver proven and consistent results for our clients. So ultimately, we hope to remove IT challenges because we all have plenty of challenges to deal with, and let's try and eliminate IT from being one of them. And we believe that by doing that, you can focus on serving your clients better and being more adaptable to the other business challenges that you do face. Together, with a good collaborative engagement and partnership with our clients, we believe our clients can achieve 4 times more value and productivity from their IT investments. If you'd like to talk to us about that, please raise your hand. We'd love to have that conversation, but I know that's not why you're here today. So let's dig in to talking about Teams rooms. All right, some of the common problems for hybrid meetings. Again, as I mentioned, pre-pandemic, it was nearly all in person, and it was kind of the exception to have somebody remote. Then we went all remote, so it was kind of the great equalizer. We're all remote. Well, now we're swinging back to being into a hybrid environment where you're going to be leveraging your huddle rooms or your conference rooms or your training rooms. Some of the problems that we have is that most, based on some studies that Microsoft has done, most training rooms or conference rooms or huddle rooms are not really equipped with the right type of audio and video equipment in order to enable a quality experience for both the in-person folks and the remote folks. So that's one of the challenges that Teams Rooms is trying to solve with having specialized equipment that actually is designed for those types of rooms to enable a good audio and video experience. So then one of the problems is, how can you make it easy for your team so it's not a big learning curve to be able to join a meeting from a conference room? Or do you need to connect external devices or all the above? So there's I know that's been a problem in the past and trying to make that really easy, and there's lots of different devices out there. So we're going to illustrate how you can join a meeting from a conference room as well as start an ad hoc meeting from a conference room. The other thing is that there's different types of conference rooms, and there's large and small meeting spaces. There's different, dynamics as far as a whiteboard on one wall versus another wall, or a training room. So there's lots of different challenges that we all face as far as depending on the type of room. And so while we're not going to illustrate the different variables for all those different large and small conference rooms, we're actually going to illustrate a small conference room or a small huddle room today, and you'll get to see the size of the room for perspective. But that's what we're going to show today. But there is the ability to accommodate all different sizes. One of the things that we're trying to also solve with regard to hybrid is, in particular, as I mentioned it earlier, the value of just brainstorming on a whiteboard or something like that. How do you involve your remote folks who are participating remotely if you're in person and brainstorming or using a whiteboard? So we'll show that today. And that's something, by the way, that is a newer technology. So you'll see some little idiosyncrasies that come with that when we do the demonstration, but it does work and it does provide a decent experience for the remote folks, at least being able to see a whiteboard when in the past they really couldn't. And then sharing of content from multiple sources. One of the problems you may have experienced in the past is if you had one person maybe sharing their screen, or one person logged into the conference room computer, if that's what your huddle room or your conference room was set up like, and then how do you let somebody else share their content? Well, you can do that with Teams rooms as well, because a lot of people are carrying their laptops around, even if they're in person, to be able to share content back and forth. Teams rooms makes that really easy as well. So that's one of the problems that we'll be able to solve. Okay, so now let's dig into the demonstration. So we're going to walk through some key scenarios. First and foremost, how do you invite and how do you create an invite or a calendar meeting with a Teams room? So I'm going to get out of the presentation here, and I'm going to go to, I've got my an untitled meeting ready to go, and I'm going to invite the Teams room, and then I'm actually going to go and show joining that. I've got to go to a different laptop to do that, so bear with me as we're going to be switching between screens. Stephanie's going to try and illustrate the different perspectives that you'll see here. So I've just got a calendar meeting invite. I'm going to set it up for a demonstration just for, say, later today at like 3 o'clock. And then, so I'm going to say test Teams room meeting invitation. Now, one of the things when you're doing a Teams room invitation is that you actually do need to make it a Teams meeting. By default, when you're creating meetings, oftentimes Teams will automatically add the Teams meeting, but I'm just going to go ahead and click up here to start the Teams meeting. As a side note, by the way, if you don't want it to be a Teams meeting and you happen to be, by default it creates one, you can click on the little settings icon and say don't host online. There's other meeting options. I'm not going to get into that today, but it's one of the things that I wanted to illustrate because this is a relatively new feature since we happen to be able to touch on it really quick. So you do need to make, if you're going to invite a Teams room, you are inviting a Teams meeting using a Teams meeting. So, so far, I'm going to invite Stephanie. I'm going to invite myself. All right, even though I'm in this, but you'll see that I have to invite myself for that purposes. The other thing I'm going to do, notice it shows a Teams meeting down here. You use the same capability of inviting like a conference room as you will to invite a Teams room. So what ends up happening is, I'll give you an example. So it's pulling up some suggestions. Actually, I have this already here. So by inviting, this is our conference room that we're in right now. We call it the sales conference room. This conference room, when we added the Teams room capability, actually you're inviting the room. So you're reserving the room, and at the same time, you're actually making it connecting it with the Teams room device in that in this conference room. So you're basically accomplishing two things by just inviting what you're familiar with, inviting a resource or a resource calendar, or inviting a room. So you'll see that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click send, but before I do that, I'd like to have Stephanie show that there's a device that we have set up in the room that right now does not. It has this meeting on it, which you'll see at the top. But as I click send, a few seconds later, you're going to see that I've invited this room, and you'll see it pop up as an option on the screen. So here we go. I'm going to click send, and Stephanie is going to go ahead and switch over to that other screen so that you'll see it pop up on that screen momentarily. So here we go, send. Of course, demonstrations, hopefully they work, right? So there we go. It popped up. If you notice, I'm going to show up here. It popped up over here. And one of the things that we noted as a quick take, that you're going to be able to do a one click join. And this is an example. I'm not going to do that yet, but this is an example. All I'd have to do is come in here and click join. So that is one of the things that I want to be able to show you momentarily now that we've got that. So actually, I'm going to click join right now, Stephanie. So I'm going to start this meeting in the Teams room. All right, click that. There we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move because I need to come over here. I'm on a different laptop. And I need to show my screen so that, here we go. I'm going to join. I need to show my screen now. Hold on 1 second. I'm sorry. I need to share my screen. Share the screen. So what I'm doing now is here's the test. Here's the test Teams meeting invitation that I just sent from my laptop. I'm actually joining via browser. So what I'm going to illustrate now is I'm just going to join from my calendar, and I'm going to click join, and it'll actually join. So I'm going to show you the experience of joining that remote team meeting as if I was a remote attendee. So here we go. I'm going to click join. I'm going to mute my microphone there and hit join. All right, so that's interesting. It didn't. Hold on 1 second. Why did it not? That is interesting. To join this meeting. That is very interesting. Well, all right, we just demoed this and it worked just fine, but now it's asking me to admit myself into the lobby, even though I'm the organizer of the meeting. So that is interesting. Well, like I said, demos work great. So let me see if I can go to my calendar again and see if I can go to the test Teams room and join. And do that, hit join. And it's not, that is really interesting. So, all right.
It was the 3 o'clock one, right?
Yes, it was. So I'm joining the 3 o'clock one. Sorry, everybody, as we're going through this, we actually had this all nailed. So maybe I need to do that. Join. There we go. That was the problem. Oh, wait, no, it's, I know I'm waiting. That's so weird. Let me try and do another test invite because I'll tell you, it actually worked just fine. So let me try that one more time. So make sure that I'm in the right calendar. I am. So I'm going to do a new team meeting. Just do it this test time. So forgive me as I'm on my other screen here. Actually, what I can do is I can do it from here. Let me do it from this calendar because it should be able to. So I'll do it from this calendar. I'll just do a new meeting. New meeting. I'll just do test Teams. Thanks for bearing with us, folks. Demos are always interesting. So I'm going to do that. Invite the sales conference room. Oh, applications probably what I need to do. Come on. Maybe I need to do it from, oh, here we go. That's what I need. Sales conference room shows that it's busy, but I'm going to change schedule for a different time. A little bit later today. I'll do 3 o'clock today, 3 to 3:30. Okay, now it shows that it's free, so that's what I needed. I'll add a required Stephanie. Okay, so I'm going to click send. So see if that sends. So I created a test meeting here. Let's see if that shows up there. It shows up on the Teams room. So I can come back over here on the Teams room. Let me try this one more time. Hopefully this works. So I'm going to click join, one click to join. There we go. It's in the Teams meeting. Perfect. So now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to join this meeting from the web browser. I'm going to mute my mic. Join now. There we go. So here's the joys of here are the joys of seeing demos when you're trying to go between different tenants, because we're in our demo environment and in our MyTech environment. So that's where sometimes these devices get confused. So, okay, now I'm showing that we are in the conference room. You can see us. If you can see the camera down here in the lower corner, you can see the camera in the conference room here. Stephanie, if you don't mind showing that, I'm not sure you're showing the whole team room.
Stop presenting.
Good. Okay, I'll stop presenting here. So I'll X out here. There we go. So now we actually see very good. So we see the whole conference room. All right, everybody. So this is one of the things we wanted to show you. So we have multiple laptops up just because Stephanie and I are producing and presenting. We're going between our demo environment and our MyTech environment. We've got a camera so you can see the Yay link. This is an option. This is not the piece you would need. But just to show you, this device over here is actually the Teams Room device. It's just a tiny little, almost just like a tablet, basically. And then the other thing that we're going to show you is the content camera. So we have not only a camera do we have that you're viewing us on right now, so you can see us through the room that's at the front of the room, but we also have this content camera that is right up here above the whiteboard. So then we have a whiteboard back here that we can then present. So this setup, specifically, if you're going to do any type of what they call a content camera, requires a camera, two different cameras, one for the video for the room and one for the content itself. So this is an example of where you're seeing the room setup. So this room is just a small conference room set up for 6 or 7 people. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. Now that you're seeing the camera, Stephanie's going to show you the Teams Room device. And so just like what you're used to for sharing your screen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here on the sharing screen. So watch my finger here. I'm going to click there. Now, if you happen to have a computer connected, it'll give you the option of saying, hey, do I want to share the connected device or do I want to share the content camera? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the content camera and I'm going to give Stephanie a moment to change screens as we go along. So I'm going to click content camera and here we go. You ready? And content camera. So now you're going to see the content camera being shared. And you see how it framed up the whiteboard. So basically is the camera pointing down at the whiteboard and framing it up. So what I'm going to do really quick is I'm just going to show you what it's like. Now here's the part where it might get a little glitchy. We've seen it because we're actually adjusting this because we have a gray wall and gray edges on our whiteboard. The content camera sometimes doesn't find the edges very well, which is one of the reasons why this is one of the examples of stuff you'd want to, tips and tricks as far as setting up your content camera. But you see, that's why we put the corners in there. But I'm going to walk up to it so you'll see me. So if you were joining remotely, you would be able to see at least what is being written on the camera, on the whiteboard. So this is something you can do. And then one of the things, once it's actually, so notice how it centers, it kind of adjusts as it's trying to make sure it captures the person and the content. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here, I'm just going to wave my arm in front of it. Notice how you can still see the writing. That's one of the reasons why the content camera is pretty cool, is because it remembers where the writing is. And so that even if I'm standing in front of it or have my hand in front of it, people remotely can still see the writing. So that's one of the cool things about the Teams room and using the content camera, so that folks remotely, because if you're in the room physically and someone's in front of the writing, you can still maybe see it, but remotely, it's really a problem. So this is one of the cool things that the content camera does. And it's very specifically set up, just like what we mentioned when we were talking about the sharing the screen, is that you have to choose the content camera or not. So, all right, so what I'm going to do now is that we're going to talk about how to join, start the meeting from the content, which we already showed, but we're going to show how you can do an ad hoc meeting. So we just showed how you can do a scheduled meeting. We just showed how you can share the content camera. But now what we're going to do is I'm going to end the session here. So, I'm going to stop sharing. So Stephanie's going to show the camera here. So again, this is very simple. I'm going to stop sharing. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to end the meeting. So no, not the meeting we're on, of course. So there we go. Now I've ended the meeting. So so this is also, as it integrates, it's one touch to start. I'm going to say stop presenting. I want to make sure we're not presenting there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you how to call. So I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to hang up since I don't need to be in this meeting anymore. Now what I'm going to do is that a Teams room is very similar to a, it's basically like a chat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click chat here. I'm going to choose the sales conference room. This is the one that we're in, for example. So notice I could actually be chatting in the sales conference room, but if I'm trying to just do an ad hoc meeting and I want to call in to the sales conference room, I can do that. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to just hit audio call and hit dial. I'm going to mute myself so it doesn't create a problem. So now you see that someone's calling. So the problem is if you're not in the room to accept this call, it won't work. But I'm going to go ahead and hit accept. So now I've accepted the call. So that's an ad hoc call. But just like with Teams, if you're using a chat to make a phone call, you actually have to only one person can call at a time. But what you can do is add participants. Stephanie and I actually tested this where we both called the room at the same time. And what ended up happening is one of us got answered and one of us got put on hold because we called in. It's like calling a cell phone at the same time, right? Same concept. So what we can do though is you can then add participants. So coming in here is very simple. I can click add participants. And then if I want, I can type in here and type in. So if I want to add Stephanie, it automatically connects again to Active Directory, and I could choose to invite Stephanie to that or not. And I'm not going to do that to call in Stephanie because she's already logged into the other environment producing, but that's an example of how you can do an ad hoc Teams meeting as well as just accepting and calling in to the room. So I'm going to go ahead and end that session, and I think that's everything that I wanted to show for now. But one of the things that I did want to highlight is I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to share my screen. Forgive me, I'm going to share my screen on the other calendar or on the other laptop. But forgive me, got to join, share my screen. Is that a common courtesy? So forgive me, when you're in a Teams room, the audio equipment is better than right now I'm just using my laptop audio, but the Teams room audio is designed to be better for the room you're in. So this is where each room kind of needs to have its own custom experience. And the camera equipment is known to be able to follow the speaker sometimes too. So you can have a different experience when you're actually watching when you're joining a Teams room remotely. So now after the demonstration, I'd really like to walk through some of the key items that you want to think about. If Teams room, if you're worried about having a hybrid experience for your team, there's some key things that I want everyone to take away. Just these are more like, FYI, public service announcement kind of items, is that, look, there is a license for this. It just goes along with your Microsoft licensing. So if you're already using Microsoft 365, Teams room standard is $15 per device per month. Now it says per device. Each Teams room would have a device. So it's really just $15 per conference room or huddle room that you'd want to set up. As I mentioned, compatible audio, camera, and video equipment are required. Again, they're depending on the size of your room. So for instance, our big training rooms that can hold up to 80 people, we have custom audio equipment installed in the ceilings that is unique and custom to that room because of its size and because of the number of people that could be in there. But that's not necessarily, that's not required for a room like a small huddle room like we're in right now. So just be aware there's custom equipment or compatible equipment. So you want to have a display. A computer is not required, by the way. You do not need to have like a PC in the room. The Teams device basically is kind of a mini computer that facilitates the joining of meetings or sharing of content. You do want to have one or two cameras, one for the video and one for the content, as well as then a display like a TV or something like that that fits the room. Again, there's different size solutions for different rooms. We're not going to get into all those details, but just know that if you needed, like for instance, we're in a room where we have one display. If you need two displays, and if you need more audio, there's different devices that are available for that. The other thing that this solution is kind of unique, and you want to have it tidy, and it's going to be different per room, is low voltage cabling may be required. Whether or not you're going to have HDMI cables or custom USB cables or powered USB cables, or etc. Is that so each room really needs to be physically assessed in order to properly scope the solution. So this room's another example, is that we have two whiteboards in this room, one on a couple walls. And so which whiteboard would you like to have the content camera attached to? How are you running the cables into the conference room table, or how are you running the cable to the TV versus the cameras? All that kind of stuff needs to be mapped out in order to make sure that you have a good experience in your conference room where you're typically having meetings and you want to look neat and tidy, isn't a mess. So that's something that these are just some of the tips that we'd recommend as we go through scoping. We want to make sure that we work with you to find, an actual go through the physical room that you're trying to put a Teams room in so that we can scope it appropriately. With that said, here are some summary tips and tricks that I would highly recommend. One, a Teams room, just as a takeaway, it's very much like reserving a room. So if you've ever reserved a room with your calendar and creating like reserving a conference room, or some people use it to reserve like a piece of equipment, same kind of thing. So with Teams room, when you're reserving a room, you're also reserving the Teams room and you're inviting the Teams room and the room itself. So that's kind of a cool two birds with one scone, feeding two birds with one scone, as Stephanie likes to say. And then when you're doing a Teams room, it's very simple. It functions like a chat. So if you want to be able to do any ad hoc conversation or ad hoc meeting, if someone in that room, they can call you, or you can call into the Teams room. So again, it functions like from a calling and chat perspective, very much like Teams chat functions. Again, the content camera is required if you want to be able to share a whiteboard. There's also a tip that we weren't able to show today, but if you are in, so for instance, Stephanie and I are in this Teams room and we have 3 different laptop devices that are in the room. If we want to, Teams is intelligent enough when you have a Teams room set up that if you're in the room, you can join the meeting and select use the room audio. So it actually knows then not to mute your mic and mute your speakers, so it's not going to create that audio feedback loop problem that commonly exists if you don't do that manually. Of course, you can do that manually, but it is a cool thing that you can join the meeting specifically using the room audio if you're in person, and it actually then automatically mutes your mic and speakers. So kind of a cool little functionality and intelligence that Teams Rooms has. So that is pretty much the summary and tips and tricks that we wanted to show you today. I would really appreciate it if join us for future events, like us or follow us on LinkedIn or Facebook. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, we put out content at least every 2 weeks. If you want to share these events with those who can benefit, please do that. Our events are always published at mytech.com/events. And we also have our monthly Power User Group session not next Friday, the Friday after, the 25th, where if you have any power users or champions, well, we do those every other month, and we'd love to have you there as well. So for those of you who are able to join us in person and watch, and thank you for the grace of fumbling through where the first meeting invite didn't work for whatever reason. So thank you for attending and watching live. For those of you joining remotely, again, thanks for watching. And for those of you who need to go, thank you. See you later, but we'll stick around and open it up for some questions. So, Stephanie, any questions?
Yeah, Nate, we do have a few questions here. The first one is, what went into the decision of using a content camera versus the whiteboard app through Teams?
Yeah, so there is a whiteboard app. The whiteboard app can be used in Teams, and I actually haven't used it a lot, but from my understanding is that the whiteboard app is actually something that if you have a touch screen display, or if you can use a stylus on your laptop screen, then you can use that as a whiteboard and share that as just like you're sharing your screen. But if you're in a room and you have a physical whiteboard in the room and you want to share that, that is different than the digital whiteboard that Teams has. So you could do both options actually, but I know that I don't have a touchscreen on my laptop for one, and I know that I'm not great at drawing with my mouse. So, and I'm not that my handwriting is that great either. You saw that. So, but anyway, that's the difference. Is if you want to be able to connect to a physical whiteboard in a physical room, the content camera is what's required.
Awesome. The next question is, does the marker need to be a special type of marker for the content camera?
It does not. It's just a great question. It's just a standard Expo dry erase marker.
Awesome. The next one has to do with licensing. They said licensing is the dollar amount per device per month. Does that mean that each person's equipment plus the room's equipment would need licensing, or just the Teams room equipment?
Yeah, great question, because Microsoft says per device per month, but it doesn't mean like the content camera, the video camera, the Teams room device. It's just the Teams room device. So basically each room, not each person, presuming they already have some sort of a Teams license, because if they're using 365, Teams is typically one of the things that they automatically are licensed with. So you don't need to worry about that. Even guests can join, just like you can invite guests via a Teams meeting, and you could admit them. So it's not the end users that you're licensing or the people joining that you're licensing. It's the device that basically there's a physical device that allows you to do the one-touch controls like I showed you. That basically gets licensed, because then it creates a resource. Not a room per se, but it's a room and a meeting device that's connected. So it's just that device. So, that's the long answer. The short answer is it's $15 per room that you want to do. But you also need equipment.
Clarifying question on that though. So the people that are attending the Teams meeting also need to have a license?
They actually don't. The people attending do not need a license, because you could invite guests. If you're the only person, like if you're inviting people via Teams and you invite all kinds of guests, they don't need a license to be able to join. You just need to be able to invite the Teams room, if that's what you're doing, to be able to use the Teams room functionality that we illustrated today.
Another question is relating to the whiteboard again. Can Teams whiteboard be used at the same time as the content whiteboard? Can you remotely post?
Great question. Again, I haven't used the Teams whiteboard, digital whiteboard. However, your question brings up something that we thought about trying to illustrate today, but really didn't, is that you can have, what I like about using the Teams room is that it's very common now, because if people have laptops, that they might be coming to a meeting, whether it's in person or remote, with their laptop. If they're in person, it's very easy to have the different people that are in the meeting, again, whether they're remote or in person, share their screen. So if someone was using a digital whiteboard, they could share that. Now, I don't know if Teams is intelligent enough to share it so someone else could post on it. I don't know the answer to that question, candidly, but someone, if they were using a digital whiteboard, could also share that, just like they were sharing their screen otherwise.
Thanks. Just some clarification here. I think you mentioned it before, but just want to clarify. Can you set up and use a Teams room on a laptop, or do you need that additional tablet to use in the Teams room?
Yeah, good question. If you want to use the Teams room functionality, you do need a special device to do it. Part of that is making sure that you don't need a laptop to come to the room and join a meeting. So that's really it. Now you can, so there's a couple things. So the minimum requirement to be able to use a Teams room, and this is Microsoft is trying to make this easy to come into a room regardless of the device you have. And as I illustrated earlier, I don't know, Stephanie, if you can share this screen of the Teams room device. So I'll show you what we're talking about here, but basically to be able to come into the room and presume that you don't have any laptop or any device, you could literally just come in here and click join. So again, I can, or new meeting. You could say new meeting or join. So that's really what the Teams room device is supposed to be able to do. You don't need a PC to attach to the video screen. You don't need a laptop to attach to the video screen, but you can have a PC and you can bring your laptop to be able to collaborate in the Teams room experience. So that's, again, that's really personal preference, but if you're trying to establish that to be able to come into, and again, I think the reason why the Teams room concept is not about necessarily the device. I mean, it is a little, but it's really about the hybrid experience, and that this equipment, so it's the Teams room device itself, connecting to the content camera, connecting to the other camera, there's the video camera, as well as the audio. That's one of the things that we've experienced, is that most conference rooms don't have the quality video or audio to give the in-person and remote people a good audio and video experience. And so the Teams rooms is really designed to not just put a little device on your conference table, it's really to enable a better audio and video experience for your team navigating hybrid meetings. So you could just bring your laptop and do that, but again, my laptop audio isn't as good as the Teams room audio when you look at it when you scope it appropriately for the size of room that you're configuring. So hopefully that helps.
Couple more questions here. Is there a big difference in features between Teams Room Standard and Teams Room Premium?
Good question. The only other thing that I don't know what it is. I think there's supposed to be some automated updates, or there's some Microsoft support in theory, but I haven't actually used that, but that's what when I read about that a little bit, we can actually provide a link to the differences in the follow-up email, but in general, it's just a little extra support on top of it, but we are not using that. We're just using the standard version, which basically just gives us a license to be able to connect to Teams Room. So we don't really expect that most small and medium business customers are going to be looking for the premium room, which is just the extra kind of, it layers on some extra services from Microsoft, from what I understand.
Right, the last question that we have in here right now is, can you go over again how we set up rooms? For example, a large conference room.
So setting up, okay, so like for instance, we're in a small conference room, and so the camera that we're using in here is different than the camera that we use in a large conference room. So we actually have a large conference room that has 2 displays instead of 1 display, and so there are different Teams Room devices. They look similar, but there's some different capabilities in the models as far as whether they support multiple displays, whether they support certain types of cameras. But this is why when you look at a large conference room versus a small conference room, it's seeing the dynamics of the room to be able to make a determination. So one of the other determinations, depending how large it is, and we basically have, as we've done some investigation and even deploying it and testing it internally, is that we basically have 3 configurations. We have a small huddle conference room just like this. We have a larger conference room, which seats probably in the ballpark of 10 to 16 people, maybe 20 if you squeeze them in, but 10 to 16 people. And then we have a large training room that can seat up to 80 people. All 3 of those rooms have different configurations. The small and the large conference room, again, if they're in that size range, are pretty standard. But once you get to the large, like a training room or something like that, it's really going to be a custom configuration based on the unique variables of that room. So I don't know if I fully answered that question, but hopefully that gave you a little bit more context and perspective. But there is different equipment for the different sizes of rooms.
Awesome. That's all the questions we have right now.
All right. Well, the last thing I'll sign off with is more of a professional courtesy thing that I would still recommend. I mean, the reality is when you're doing a hybrid environment, even if you're all remote or hybrid, is that sometimes if you're speaking, just the nature of this stuff working, someone else, if they're trying to speak at the same time, whether you're in person or remote, it's hard to hear. So one of the things that we still are trying to encourage from a professional courtesy perspective is use the raise hand feature, right? Use your raise hand so you can actually pause and speak and give people the opportunity to chat. It doesn't mean you have to do that all the time, but that's one of the things that we have found also can help you have a better experience instead of everyone trying to talk at the same time, or if people in the room are talking and there's multiple people talking, it still doesn't provide the greatest experience for those remote folks, or if there's multiple remote folks trying to speak at the same time. So just as a tip that again, this is just a Teams tip regardless, video conferencing tip to go after kind of a professional courtesy is use the raise hand function, and that'll give you a better experience as well. So with that said, thanks a lot everybody for attending. There will be more to come around Teams rooms. It's an exciting development as we come back to the office, but the reality of having a hybrid workforce is here to stay. So please, we're in the follow-up email. We'll have some information that you'll be able to reference, as well as if you want to raise your hand to say, hey, let's talk about Teams rooms, we'd be happy to have that conversation too. Thanks a lot, everyone. We'll talk to you later.